We are back, and as promised, we have a great guest lined up next. I'm going to bring Don Marti in, and welcome. It's good to have you here this evening.
Hello, Jay.
Hello, hello. All right, so you heard the drill, I think, with Piper. We're going to do Bernard Pivou's famous 10 questions, but because we're a nonprofit, we have to stay on a tight budget. We only have 4.5 for you. I'm going to pick up with the last half of the last question we asked. So, most desire taking dancing lessons with?
Ooh, I'm going to have to go with Keanu Reeves, as long as I can take them by the I know Kung Fu method from The Matrix.
That is an awesome answer. Oh, wow. And I think Piper's answer for the entire band of U2 can carry over to that as well. Next question.
That sounds like a dance party.
Yeah, that sounds like a dance party. Next question, Google or Bing?
Oh, Google.
There you go. If you could change one thing about your education, what would it be?
More metal shop.
That's interesting. Wow, that's a cool answer. Very insightful. What is your favorite smell?
Cookies.
Good one. And when you get to heaven, who would you most like to take tea with?
I'm going to have to say my grandfather.
Oh, that's a good answer. Good answer. Go for sentimental. That's awesome. So, Don, your resume reads like a who's who for this industry. Scylla DB before NoSQL was even cool. You did work at Mozilla MadProps for open source tools and practices. Now with Cafe Media at the heart of what a $1 trillion industry. And not to be outdone by yourself, you also work with Consumer Reports contributing to their tech lab. So, we can't think of a better person to kind of take the second half of this show and talk to us about the topic tonight. So welcome on that. Let me ask you the first question. How big is our world of data collecting getting?
I know that there's going to be big estimates of how much data there is in terms of absolute raw volume of data, but it's not all, if it's about people, it's not all data that you're allowed to use. It's kind of like finding a piece of fine art at a garage sale and wanting to be able to sell it, even if you believe that an artwork is original or authentic. Nobody's going to buy it from you without the provenance. They're not going to buy it without some kind of a bill of sale or receipts or a commission that went out to that artist to indicate that the painting, the raw information good, is actually associated with terms that say it is what it says it is, and that you're allowed to use it.
Right. So the proof of ownership that goes into this thing is also now connected, I think, to data. Right. It's sounding more and more like that.
Yes. We've got all kinds of pre-GDPR marketing systems in which there's been provision made for nice, neat database columns of every piece of information about a person, but there isn't a clean way to keep track of under what terms did you collect this information, what purpose were you allowed to collect it for, who do you have consent to share it with. All of that stuff means that just raw data by itself is more and more, there's more and more overhead to having to use it.
Yeah, and You know, the terms that you just mentioned, by the way, I have just recently become aware of this concept of battle of the forms, but lawyers have been aware of this for almost 100 years now. This idea that for the velocity of business, and this was in the run up to World War II, a resource provider could throw out their terms and conditions just to ship the goods to the factory, but the factory had every right to come back with their terms and conditions, their reciprocal terms and conditions, and work out something between the two of them. But, you know, before authorized agency, before you saw authorized agents come up, that conversation hadn't happened in the area of data. But now it is, right? We're starting to see authorized agents have that conversation. So it's kind of an interesting time right now around data rights and ownership, and I think there's a dialogue forming that could actually potentially be good for business. Is that right?
Oh, definitely, definitely. There's a differentiating value for a company in having enough of a trust relationship that you can get that authenticated data, that data with clear provenance. And a lot of it is going to depend on the regulators, and if they choose the right set of regulatory actions to bring, both in Europe, in California, where I live, and in other states that are getting their privacy laws, that will really help shape the investments that companies make in the future into permission-based data, rather than just try to grab as much as you can and get the lawyers to make it legal.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's some large tech companies at the top. When you talk about grabbing all the data that they can, they've certainly been doing this and maybe have gotten a little bit of a head start on everybody. We hear a lot of people saying it's unfair, or, you know, that there might be some sort of issues with trade regulations and monopolies and the like. But you recently posted a blog, and I'll tell you, it's so famous it's infamous, right? I think I got it looped around from several of my friends. It certainly made the rounds. The blog was called "Your Cohorts Are Just Ethnic Affinity Groups, Change My Mind." Wow, that's a provocative title. For our viewers, you know, kind of dive into maybe some of the tidbits in there. And I think the most important thing is, you know, what are flocks and what are cohorts, and, you know, why should they care?
All right. Well, as most people in this business know, Google has decided that they are finally going to catch up with the other browsers and get rid of the third-party cookies. They're going to make it impossible to set a cookie that will enable somebody to be tracked as the same user from one site to another. Now, of course, this is a way to keep up with the state of the art in web browsers, but it also presents a problem for Google's business model, where part of their service is enabling advertisers to reach large numbers of people at scale on multiple sites. So what they've come up with is a variety of proposals for, in effect, moving a lot of web advertising into the browser. And these proposals are being discussed right now at the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, Web Advertising Business Group, and a bunch of other groups within W3C. And to give them credit where credit is due, they are putting a lot of detailed information out there, both on separate GitHub projects and within the source of the open source Chromium browser, so you can see what direction this stuff is going.
Yeah,
and Flock is
now,
one of those.
oh yeah, and I was going to dip into that just a little bit. So if I understand correctly, cohorts is a way of grouping people, and they group them with a quote unquote anonymous identifier. And most of the smaller companies out there would never be able to figure out what your cohort is. But if a company was large enough, say like Facebook, and you had 2 billion users and they were logging into your system and they said, by the way, here's all the cohorts that I belong to, they could probably suss out what every single one of those are. So isn't this giving an unfair advantage to the tech giants and maybe actually putting a stumbling block in front of smaller and middle range companies that might be looked to bring forth some competition in the marketplace?
Well, cohorts, first of all, one Google Chrome user is only in one Flock cohort at a time. So there's some other proposals out there that have the idea of interest groups that a person could be invited into multiple interest groups by different sites. But Flock is kind of unusually based on giving everyone one cohort. And the cohort is a single number, and there are about 32,000 different possible cohorts. So if you're a small site that has, say, 100,000 page views per month, if there's 70% Chrome, and you see, if there's 70% Chrome, then you're going to see each individual cohort on average less than once during the weekly interval through which the cohorts reset. So part of the obfuscation around these things is that they're designed to be recalculated every week. So you might be in a different cohort from one week to the next.
Right. So quick question, kind of a follow-on question here. You've done a little bit of work with Consumer Reports. I promised we would ask a question about that. So it dealt with authorized agencies. That's like Privacy Co-op, where people can come and opt out. You guys set up an authorized agency of your own. Is that right?
Yes. Well, we set up an experiment to walk people through the process of doing a couple of different steps of the authorized agent process. So we had to get of course, identity verification from the person. We had to get them to sign a permission letter. And then once we had that permission letter, then there's essentially a stack of PDFs that we can then send on behalf of each person to some of the key data brokers. And so we did a couple of different companies.
You did 21, right? You had, I think AT&T was in there, and some data brokers and some fairly large companies. It was a good mix. It was a typical Consumer Report job. You guys were very thorough. And tell me about the results. Did you receive pushback from some businesses, and were there some businesses that said, yeah, hey, we'll work with you on this?
We got a couple of different kinds of responses. The first one was, the first type of response that we got that was frankly pretty disappointing was, well, our lawyers say that the things that we do with your data are not technically a sale under California law. And so right around the time we were doing this study, everybody was getting fired up about the 2020 election. And one of the things that happened in the 2020 election from the California point of view is that the people of California went and voted and clarified that the definition of what you're opting out of with an authorized agent includes those practices. So that was that type of response was a curse you, Red Baron, you've won this time. But
it's amazing work. I encourage everybody to go out and look it up. By the way, I think we put it under tinyurl.com/CRAA report, just to make it easy for folks to find it. You can type that in and take a look at it. It was really exciting read. It felt like I was reading a journal entry from my day-to-day life, because you guys were going through exactly what we go through at the Privacy Co-op. Don,
Yeah,
it's awesome.
It's an incredibly popular type of service. And
Don, it's been great having you. I'm short on time, but we'll have you back soon. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
thank you, Jen.